So Paterson, thank you so much for joining me to talk about your book, your first ever novel.
Yes, thank you. No, I'm very glad to be here talking about it.
So the Secret Diaries of Charles Ignatius Sancho. He is a real life figure, but you've sort of done a fictionalized account. So who is this man that you have dedicated actually quite a lot of your adult life to being quite interested in?
Yeah, more time than I thought I would. Why is he interesting? He was born on a slave ship in 1729, which already you think, well, I mean, where are you going to go from there? But his parents die very early. We don't know. I mean, the facts are very bare. Born on a slave ship, possibly crossing to Colombia from the coast of the west coast of Africa. At 3 years old, he's already orphaned. So his mother possibly died in childbirth. Father possibly committed suicide. And then his master, took him from Colombia to Greenwich to live with these three spinster sisters. And that's when his life becomes very, very different. And he grows up not being taught how to read, but wanting to. He's found by the Duke of Montagu fortuitously in Blackheath Park. And Montagu gives him books secretly. And he ends up a sort of friend to that family, ends up being their valet, he ends up being their butler at some point. But that's why I thought his story was fascinating. He's come from less than nothing. And he achieved that. And because he had a grocer's store at the end of his life, he was able to vote. So he becomes the first black man to vote. And it's so unlikely that the boy born on the slave ship would end up being the first black person. And actually most people, white or black in England, could not vote because you had to own property. And only 2% of the population did. And they were all male. And women weren't allowed to own property. So the fact that he went from there to there was just impossible to ignore. And I think he's a really important figure for anybody, actually, who feels like an outlier, who feels like there's no chance I can get out from under where I am. Look what this man achieved at the time of the greatest oppression, I think, of black people that there has ever been in history.
It's kind of crazy that so many people don't know his name
Yeah.
when he did so many iconic things. Did that play a role in you wanting to kind of get this story out there?
It's a record, isn't it? It's all about record and history and who tells what story. So if we talk about the United Kingdom, of course, our picture of the 18th century, naturally, is very white, because all of the books that we've read were by white people, usually men, and all the films that we've seen about the 18th century, they're all white people. So if somebody presents to you a figure or a group of figures or a community that you've never heard about, and you think, the first thing you think is this true? I did that myself when I started researching. And to discover that there was not only black people, but a multicultural London, a multicultural cities and towns around England, blew my head off. But it was the excitement of finding these worlds that made me sort of, I suppose, live with him for so long. And because he was also an actor, that was a hook. Because he was also obese and had a speech impediment, that was a BAFTA. So because he was part of the royal family, that was a colour that you would never think to find with a slavery narrative. And he was just a perfect mix.
And what did you have to think about in kind of the writing style? It's first person because it's, style of diaries. So what were you trying to emulate in terms of how they write in the 1700s?
Well, obviously, I immersed myself in as much writing as I possibly could. Obviously, you're talking about Johnson, actually, Samuel Johnson. Even though he wasn't a novelist, he did try to write a play, Irene, which failed. But there was quite a lot of his aphorisms that were very interesting, because I felt that Sancho sort of imitates him a little bit. Reading Tristram Shandy, that shaggy dog tale that goes down different alleyways and byways, which was Sancho's inspiration, helped me with the language and the way of speaking. Because actually, it's a perfect audiobook in that it's written to be spoken aloud.
Yeah.
It's written as thoughts, and then he addresses his son, so it's almost written as conversation, intimate conversation. So it lends itself very well to that. I think that seemed to me the best form to present it in.
How did you find narrating an audiobook that's yours? It's your book for the first time.
So weird. So very weird. So I started reading the beginning of the book, And I could feel all this self-consciousness, which I'm feeling it now, which I don't normally feel when I'm reading a book. I'm just like, I'm a storyteller. I'm just going to tell you the story in, using my voice. But here I am going, and every word seemed to be just dragged out of me. And it took me a couple of hours to go, no, you need to do what you did with the play, eventually separate yourself from the author, in that case the playwright, and be the actor doing your job, so which I did. When I listen back to it, of course, I think, God, I would have done less. I think you should have done less in that moment. I think you're a bit over the top with the ladies. I think you could have made Lawrence Stern a bit more sympathetic. So there's a lot of criticism that I didn't have when I was reading The Three Musketeers, because I was just enjoying reading that amazing story. But yeah, it was one of the hardest, strangest weeks, because you're trying to stop yourself correcting everything and just reading it, but of course it's yours. So yeah, it was just a really odd, like patting your stomach and tapping your head. No, what was it? Rubbing your stomach and tapping your head. Yeah, that's exact how difficult it was. There you go. I've demonstrated how difficult it was.
There's even a bit where there's some songs in there. When you put those in, had you thought in your head that you might have to sing them?
I hadn't thought it through. I hadn't thought it through at all. And I don't sing. I mean, ironically, I'm in this Wonka musical, but it's a bit of funny singing. This Wonka musical that's coming out soon. But I had this moment where it came to I'll just try. I'll have a go. And it was fine the first time. And then you hear it back and you think, this is such a weird thing to have in the middle of an audiobook, this sort of something. So I was very, as I feel now, very self-conscious about the whole experience. I hope it doesn't come across like that. I think eventually, after 2 or 3 chapters, I was fine. I just read it like a book. But every now and then there'd be a sort of shock of, did I write this? Okay. Why have I made it so difficult for myself?
And how do you feel kind of about Sancho's place in your personal life now? Do friends and family, revel in the Sancho stories? Are they kind of bored of him by now?
They have little choice, because it's all I do and all I talk about, really. The day job is starting again. I'm an actor, so I should be doing that, really. So that will be, they'll get a rest from that. But no, they're really encouraging, and I think they're slightly sort of surprised at how much I've found out, because, reasonably, they are anyway, I don't know about me, decently educated. But again, they didn't know. So they're very encouraging. They're always have always been very encouraging about my work, and they've. I think they're sort of pleased and a little bit surprised. Yeah. Because I was so terrible at the school. I think they were like, huh? You did what?
Well, Paterson, thank you so much for bringing this into my life, for bringing it into lots of other people's lives as well.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.